Hey guys, Cloverjack here with your monthly general reading for the sign of Libra. Oh, I'm sorry these are a little bit late. Had some minor technical difficulties, as in I recorded most of these videos really high resolution, and so they take forever to upload, like days and days and days and days and days. So I'm a little behind. So we're almost going to treat this more as a mid-monthly since we're on the 11th, I think it is. 10th, 11th, it's the 10th today, I'm sorry. In any case, I have already pre-shuffled, but just a little bit of housekeeping ahead of time. I use decks that are not really super traditional tarot, and what I mean when I say that is that the minor arcana don't have the imagery that the major arcana do, or that the minor arcana do in other decks. They look more like playing cards than anything else. So it's like a playing card deck, but with major arcana. If you're used to reading tarot, or if you're at least familiar with the cards enough that you get a little bit of extra insight by looking at the cards when other tarot readers read for you, you might find it a little tricky here, but you're welcome to give it a shot. I mean, I won't begrudge anyone trying to get some extra insight outside of what I can provide. So, all that said, I am still kind of shuffling this a little bit. Because they're not really sticky. What I mean by sticky is I know when a deck is ready because it either shuffles only in chunks, like thick chunks, or it starts jumping all over the place, which tells me that the cards are in a fixed position and they don't want to move anymore. But your cards are not sticking, so I'm wondering. Oh, okay, that's a little better. All right, this might be a month where things are really up in the air, like really up in the air. Okay, I'll take that. We're starting to have a little bit of jumpiness, so I'll take that. Okay. All right, let's see what we got for you. Okay, I said up in the air and you got the 8 of Wands, like immediately. Lovely. Yeah. In my head I'm thinking, oh, don't be surprised if a ton of major arcana show up in this reading. Yeah. And there you go. Almost half your spread. This is, really all up in the air. Bottom of the deck is the 10 of Cups. And you may or may not be able to see this as I place it over here in the corner. All right, so, like I said, I think that you guys have a lot of things up in the air. And while the 8 of Wands isn't usually considered like a juggling card, it does feel like there are many things that are up in the air. It's not like just one thing that you're waiting on, or like one event that's imminent, or even two. I mean, like, it feels like 4, 5, 6, like multiple things are all up in the air. I mean, you can be waiting for messages from multiple people. You could be waiting, like if you're job hunting, you could be waiting for responses to like 20 applications that you just kind of sprayed all over the place. Yeah, I mean, it feels like there's a lot of things going out, but also coming in. I think that there's more coming in that you're waiting on than going out. I feel like you've been sending a lot of things out, and nothing's kind of coming back to you just yet, but they're starting to come back to you, and there's going to be a lot more coming back than you sent out, is kind of what I'm feeling. So say if you sent out, for example, 20 resumes, I think you're going to get responses on maybe 10, which sounds like, well, wait, I've sent out 20, why am I only getting responses to 10? I think that you'll probably send out, like in the next couple of weeks, maybe like 2. And so the 10 versus 2, right? Like it's more like your current investment versus your current return, as opposed to your past investment versus your current return, I suppose is how I want to put it. But be careful, because I think a lot of the stuff that you've been sending outwards has set a lot of things into motion that you can't see yet and that you won't see for the month of November. And the reason why I say that is I know for a fact that I am in the minority of tarot readers when in the way that I read the majors versus the minors. So for me, major arcanas are things that are happening around you that you can't see. They are things that are currently in the process of manifesting, whereas the minor arcanas are things that you can see and or witness or hear or touch or whatever within your current environment. Those are the things that, you know, have manifested already or in the process of manifesting in some sort of tangible, visible way. So when I say like things are coming in, I mean that literally. There's a lot more up in the air and a lot of new stuff coming. I don't necessarily know that a lot of it's good though. I mean, you've got high hopes that it's good, but I mean, 7 makes me question, you know, the intentions of a lot of the stuff that was going out before. Like in some cases, I think that there's actually like 4 different scenarios I can go here. I'm going to go for the ones that seem most like they would affect probably the most amount of people, and then we'll double back and see if the other couple ones still apply. I feel like I know that the 7 is kind of looked at as a deceitful card. In this particular case, I want to say it's more about a desperation. Like a lot of things that were done in desperation, or that you wanted to call something in that was big. The next big job, the next not a big relationship, but like a big comeuppance on a relationship. I can't think of a better word for kind of what I'm thinking other than a judgment, which is exactly what the card is, which doesn't really help you much. But like a final judgment is kind of what I'm feeling. And I feel like you've been kind of like throwing intentions out in many ways so that you can call this judgment in. It's almost like you're like if you were, for example, a political canvasser, you know, and you're just like calling everybody, calling politicians all the time. You're leaving voicemail after voicemail after voicemail after voicemail, you know, desperately wanting to call in some kind of change, some kind of, you know, some kind of rain from the heavens, so to speak. Right? Like some sort of divine punishment. That's what it is. Not always quite punishment, but it has that same kind of like overbearing finality to it. And I think that doing all of this out of desperation has kind of is going to lead you into a bit of a place where you think you've been deceived. So acting out of desperation will probably put you in a situation where you feel like you have been deceived, or that was not what I ordered, or that's not what I wanted. Those were not my intentions. What is this? Why is this what I'm getting? That's more what I'm getting here. And it's not like a disappointment. It's angry. Or in some cases, I think some of you just might feel a little bit empty about it, like a bit like, what? Why is that the thing? Like you're not angry, but you're just like so confused that it feels like a little bit like anger. Because you had really high hopes for things. And believe it or not, some really good things will come of this. You'll get the ending that you wanted. You'll get the new beginning that you wanted. In fact, you'll get the new beginning before you get the new ending, which I think is fascinating. But you do have some seriously big changes that I feel like, despite all of these intentions that have been being thrown out, you've been resisting. I don't know if you've been consciously resisting them, but I feel like, okay, that's weird. I mean, like, I kind of feel like a fishing bobber, you know, it kind of like sits on the top of the water and just kind of like floats with the wave, but like a fish bites the hook and the bobber goes down, but then, you know, the fisherman pulls the bobber back up, and so you're kind of like fluctuating, and so you can't, and the fish is too strong for the fisherman, and, you know, so you kind of get this weird oscillation between accepting the change and not accepting the change, and it's kind of put this change in stagnation, which is probably why you've been thinking about like, well, I really want to call this in. You've been throwing the intentions out there, even though subconsciously you may have been resisting this change. And so what's happening is you're manifesting a brand new beginning, which you cannot see yet, but is definitely, definitely, definitely there, and you'll be aware of it very soon. And I feel like this completion is actually like a long ways off. Like quite a ways off. Like I want to say like a couple months off before you see any sort of like physical manifestations of this ending. But the ending still comes before the No. The ending comes after the beginning. I'm sorry. Ending comes after the beginning. Oh, that's weird. There's a lot of conflicting things here. I don't like it. I don't like it because it confuses me. It's not like I don't like the actual reading. It confuses me when I try to, give a message, because I'm like, oh, wait, that's not right. But, that actually might be your mindset, because it's very reminiscent of that. Now, there are 3 court cards here. I want to talk a little bit to the people who are in relationships, who have just left relationships, or who are pining for a relationship. Now, I don't typically do like straight up love readings. I like to just, work with whatever the cards happen to give me. And I feel like a lot of the time it tends to give the thing that is most prominent. And I feel like love readings kind of really need to be done one-on-one, or pick a card where you can get something that's a little bit more specific to your situation than a general overview for a month. But I digress. On the bottom of the deck, you do have the Ten of Cups, which is like an emotional fulfillment. And so in addition to that, we've got the Knight of Cups, which I know has N's on it instead of a K, but that's because, kings have the K, and so he gets an N for knight with a silent K. But that's emotional fulfillment. And I feel like the Knight of Cups, like the one who would come rushing in with an emotional offer, the one that would come rushing in with, I don't want to say like an apology, but maybe an apology, or whatever it is that you want that will bring you emotional fulfillment in a romantic sense. That would be an offer, an apology, a confession, an affirmation, anything of those lines that confirms or denies, really, someone's feelings as they pertain to you. I feel like the Knight in this case is electing to do nothing. In fact, he's going in a very opposite direction from you, or, if that is you, you're going in a very opposite direction from them. You're just kind of electing to ignore them. And they're kind of left, holding the baby, so to speak. Not a literal, I hope it's not a literal baby. Please don't be a literal baby. That's just awful. Like, on so many levels. But I feel like that kind of leaves you, or, the other person, in a bit of a weird situation, because it kind of feels like you thought things were going okay. Maybe you weren't as emotionally invested into... That kind of conflicts a lot of things. Like I said, this is a really conflicting reading. And so I wonder if... Because I didn't do last month's for Libras, so I don't really know what the story was then. And so it's a little hard to just pick it up right in the middle. But I wonder if in recent months, if you've been experiencing trouble or any sort of, how do I say this? Like if you've been fighting with your partners, if you've been in a state of dis-ease, where you're, you haven't been comfortable, you haven't been like perfectly happy or anything like that with your partner, or even without them. I feel like that kind of, that's kind of where you're currently at. And I wonder if that's why the Knight is walking away from you. And electing not to say anything about their feelings. And I feel like whatever you're left with you're kind of wondering, well, what do I do with this? And I think what you've been doing with what you've been left with is kind of using those emotions, those thoughts, those feelings to kind of throw your intentions back out into the universe and then manifest the, divine punishment, so to speak. Yeah, and that might be why this is coming from a dishonest place for those of you who are in relationships. There is a character on this spread that's a little bit vengeful, which is also why I say this. I mean, you can look at the page and the king of being two sides of the same coin in this particular case. I mean, it could be another person, but I mean, I don't like to read into third-party situations and things like that unless it's like pretty blatant, especially in a general spread anyway. It doesn't quite feel right to me because in many ways, reading people and giving advice, especially to strangers, which I'm sure, most of you are when you're kind of randomly viewing a YouTube video on the internet. It's a little irresponsible, I feel like, to throw a lot of scenario suggestions out there in a way that may make people suspicious of their partners or suspicious of the people around you when they really have no reason to be. Because sometimes things will feel like they'll resonate because they play in on fears that you may have, and I just don't like that. So I don't read third parties in this sort of thing unless it's like super, super, super in your face. In a general reading for like lots of people, obviously. I mean, if this was like a pick a card or a personal reading, then yeah, sure. I mean, I'm happy to kind of give you whatever information is there, but I don't. It just feels really irresponsible to do that. I don't want to... It just feels really irresponsible. That's all I have to say. Anyway, that was a bit of a long digression. There is someone on here that's feeling a bit vengeful. And that's one of the reasons why I said it might be sort of a romantic situation. I mean, these kinds of vengeful feelings rarely crop up in non-romantic or non-person-to-person interpersonal relationships. They don't really show up quite the same way. I mean, this is a guy who's on the warpath. All right. And well, I think, a lot of that anger has been curbed in recent weeks or months, depending. I feel like a lot of it still lingers, and I think it'll sort of resurface, I mean, this feels like a perfect case of what you put out is what you get back. And that your intentions really, really, really matter. So, when you go out with this kind of vengeful sort of energy, either trying to get back at somebody or, trying to reclaim something that you think is yours when it may or may not have been, and either way, belongs to somebody else or just doesn't belong to you anymore, I feel like, the universe goes, hey, wait a minute. That's not yours. So we're going to stop that, like right now, change directions, you're going to start over. All right? And that's where you're kind of left, holding the baby, so to speak, wondering, well, what the hell is this? Right? Like, you feel like you've been deceived, but I don't feel like you actually have. Yeah. Now, there's going to be a lot of internal conflict that comes from this, I think. I mean, it doesn't feel like really heavy, but it does feel like in the last couple weeks of November, or really like the last week of November, you're going to be not sifting through emotions and not really sifting through thoughts, but kind of like just sorting pieces of yourself out. And that might take thoughts and feelings and combination thereof, but it feels very detached to me. But either way, it kind of feels like, those metaphors where you see like little people and they're supposed to represent your brain or like the different parts of your brain because they're all doing different jobs or whatever, and they're running hither and yon and doing all this kind of stuff. It feels like that kind of mental conflict I mean, it's not really super emotional baggage to sort through, and it's not super mental baggage to sort through. It's more just like, what just happened? It's all over the place, right? It just feels all over the place. And you got to get them all kind of arranged in a good way to kind of put your head back on straight, right? And to realign yourself. That might be a better way to put it, to realign yourself. So that going forward, this does not happen again. Because you've got some stuff coming that's going to be really big. I'll be fascinated to do December's, because it looks like you're going to see the manifestation of the ending of this situation then. Like, you're going to get closure for this whole situation then, like in December. For very few of you in January, but mostly in December. But I think the new beginning, whether that's like a new prospective partner or a new potential job offer, like say an interview, will show up like the last week of November. And yeah, I think that's all I have for you. If this resonated with you, leave me a like or a comment, or either or is fine, I guess. I'd love to hear from you. And if not, well, I'll just see you guys next time. All right? Have a good month.